Hello, and welcome to the Cash-Based Practice Podcast, a production of drjarodcarter.com, aimed at giving physical therapists and other healthcare practice owners the information needed for success in the private pay business model. And now, here's your host, Jarod Carter.
Hello and welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for joining me. This is a Cash Practice Mastermind excerpt episode. I host the Cash-Based Practice Mastermind, and every week we do a coaching call. And some of the episodes in the podcast now, we are taking excerpts from those coaching calls so you can experience the types of strategies and advice that I'm sharing there, and also see what it would be like if you would like to be a part of the group and get my direct feedback on all of your questions and challenges in your practice. It's a wonderful and supportive small group of practice owners who are doing huge things in the cash-based business model. Not just physical therapists, we got speech therapists, occupational therapists, chiropractors, and direct primary care physicians as well. So, if you'd like to check out that group and see all that's included in our membership website, all past coaching calls where you can literally search through years for any keywords. If you want to see something about discovery sessions, or you want to see something about, converting and presentations, if you want to see something about a logistical piece of your practice, you do a search in that part of the website and it'll take you to every call where I've discussed that at all, and even take you to the minute and second that I start discussing that topic. So it's just an enormous resource and a wonderfully supportive group of like-minded practice owners. We would love to see you in the group. Check it out at drjarodcarter.com/mastermind. Before we dive into today's excerpt, I would, as always, like to thank the sponsors of this podcast, Patient Sites. They are a wonderful, wonderful company that will take care of all of your website and most of your marketing needs as well. All done for you at a very fair price. Check out the details at patientsites.com, and if you want to get started with them, make sure you mention this podcast so you get a nice discount for doing so. Thank you so much, as always, for joining, and with all that said, here is today's episode. I expect that you have the underlying foundational belief that what y'all are providing is truly a higher level service than what they're going to get elsewhere. And so I think, this sticking point of, are you in my network, or do you take my insurance? It's one that we all, it's not a comfortable subject, but I just want to say first and foremost that after having done it for years and tried a lot of different styles of conversations and responses and how to guide the conversation, I have come to find some very useful ways to go about it, where it becomes much more comfortable, and you can pretty quickly figure out if the person really is going to have the type of mindset that is going to fit well with your practice, or maybe not. And I'll also kind of preface this with saying that early on, I think a lot of us who are answering the phone, whether we're, admin or an actual practitioner, we tend to kind of lean in the direction too quickly of, oh, they just didn't have the right mindset. They would never go out and network. And what I found over time is that if we can resist the urge to place that kind of label on them, we'll find that we have a lot higher conversion. And a lot of times we're like, that person's coming in for their 8th visit. And it's like, wow, when I first talked to them on the phone, I remember, the first thing they asked was, do you take Blue Cross Blue Shield? And it was, I really thought there's no way I'm getting this person in here, but I followed kind of not the script, but this, approach I'm about to explain. And here they are, they're doing great. They're so glad that they ended up, deciding to come with us, even though it was out of network. But okay, so let's dive into that conversation and how I've found, and again, I've been in practice for, I think, about 10 years now. And so I've had this conversation literally hundreds and hundreds of times, and I've taught about it. And what I've found to be best is, let's say, you pick up the phone and they say, hi. They might not even say their name. They just say, hi there. Do you guys take Aetna, or do you guys in network with Aetna? And I say, a lot of our patients have Aetna, but before we get into actual coverage, can you tell me a little bit about what you're dealing with and why you're seeking physical therapy, so I can make sure that we're a good fit for your needs? That statement, that that approach to starting the conversation has been magic, because one of two things generally will happen. They'll either say something, maybe snarky. If they're really like hardcore about, I'm only going to go where I'm going to use my insurance, they'll say, no, I really want to know about Aetna first, whatever. And in that case, if they're literally going to ignore that question of mine and not try to explain what's going on to see if we would be a good fit for their needs, then it's not someone I'm going to spend a bunch of time trying to convert or convince to come in, right? Most of the time, people will say, yeah, sure, I'm dealing with this neck pain and blah, blah, blah. And then you start to have them talk as much as possible and get as much information as you can, not only about what they're dealing with so that you can pass that on to the therapist, but how it's affecting and limiting their life, right? And you don't want it to sound, salesy, but you just want to be inquisitive, really. We want to know when someone's coming in, not only the technical aspects of their pain and injury so we can figure out what's causing it and how we fix it as a therapist, right? Or as a business. But we want to know, what are your long-term goals? Why is this such a disturbing pain that you're actually willing to come and pay money or use insurance, whatever, right? Is it keeping you from being able to focus at work? Is it keeping you from being able to play with your kids? How is it keeping you from being able to exercise? Is it keeping you from being able to do your heart healthy workouts and make sure that you're, a long part of your family's life? The answers to that can go on and on, but what's really important is that you not only get them talking about the details of their pain or injury, but how it's limiting them. And sometimes I'll even, after they've talked for a while, I'll say, there's something I like to ask all of our patients or potential patients. If I could snap my fingers and take this situation, this pain away, right? Let's just, hypothetically, what right now are you not doing, or are you limited in doing as much as you'd like to, that this pain or this injury is keeping you from doing, right? If they haven't already kind of alluded to that, in some ways they're talking about the issue, and this back pain, and now I can't really, I can't sit in my car for too long, or I can't play with my kids. Make sure that you get them to verbalize that, because we as human beings, we make decisions based on emotion, not on logic. Okay. And so we have to get them talking about the things that are emotionally attached to this pain. We all can live with pain. I have pain right now in my groin. I've had an abdominal hernia for the last 15, 20 years. It hurts every moment of the day, but it's only a 1 or a 2 out of 10. It's manageable. My options of surgery that could make it go even worse in the wrong direction, it's just not worth it. But if it were worse, if it were keeping me from being able to play with my kids, staying as fit as I want to be, etc., then I would roll the dice on that surgery, which is probably the only hope for getting rid of it. Same thing with physical therapy. Same thing with any attempt at getting rid of a pain. Only when it's enough to limit you in an emotional way from something in your life are you going to be willing to make a decision to pursue treatment. Okay. So we don't want to focus on the pain as much as we want to focus on how it's affecting their lives in an emotional way. Right. So those are some of the key things to take away from this discussion, is that starting statement to get them to either say, no, I really want to talk about insurance, and then say, okay, no, we're not in network with Aetna. But like I said, many of our patients have Aetna, and they either, I guess you guys probably bill on out of network on their behalf. In my case, I say many of them will send in self-claims, and depending on their plan, they might get reimbursement or application towards a deductible. Your answer might be technically different, for if you guys bill out of network and all that kind of stuff. But if they don't go that direction and they start to talk about the issue, and then you can get them to talk about what's emotionally tied up in that, then you have a chance, to open them up to the idea of, hey, these people actually care about what's going on. They're willing to talk to me. And I know that when you're answering the phone, and, in the customer service world, it's kind of counterintuitive, this idea of see how long you can keep them on the phone. but you got to do that. Even if it means missing calls and having to go back and reply to missed calls, the longer you can keep them on the phone, the longer you can get them talking about their pain and issues, and especially how it's limiting them, the better a chance you're going to have to getting them to come in. And that kind of leads us to our next point. When you have someone that is asking, especially right up front, if you take their insurance, then you're almost never pushing to get them to sign up for a full paid evaluation. The push there is really going to be for the discovery session. If that's where their mindset is at the beginning of the call, it's very rare that you're, even with 15, 20 minutes of talking and really developing like a decent start to the relationship, that they're going to be able to get over the hump of, okay, now I'm going to have to pay $150, the first time I come in. They're just not there in the relationship with you in that business to be able to likely get them to say yes to that. And sometimes if they do say yes, you'll find your no-show rates on those are actually quite high. So my suggestion there is anyone who's asking for insurance first, really you're pushing just to get them in for a discovery session. And the way you might frame that is after you've talked to them about the issue, that you've gotten them to talk about how it's limiting them. And then the next thing you would say is, well, now that I've listened to what you're dealing with, I can tell you that it's a very familiar story. We see patients with this issue all the time, and we treat it with high success all the time, if that is in fact the case. Sometimes part of that initial conversation for me as a clinician too is also sometimes I'm saying, you know what, actually you need to see so-and-so, or I'd like you to get imaging first, or et cetera. But 90+% of the time, if they're calling you with a pain or injury, it's something that you guys can help with, you do help with. And so it is completely honest to say, this is a common thing. We treat it, quite often with high levels of success. But what I'd like to do to start out, if you're okay with it, is instead of coming in for a full evaluation and treatment session, I want to make sure that my physical therapist also feels 100% confident that they can help with this exact issue that you're dealing with and get you back to XYZ, the limitation they gave you, get you back to running 5 miles 3 times a week. Before we ask, you or your insurance to pay anything for the service. I want you to be confident that we're going to be helpful for you, and vice versa, that we can come through with that promise. And so in these situations, we offer what we call a discovery session. It's completely free consultation. It's 20 to 30 minutes of time where you get to come in, sit down with a therapist, they'll do a brief screening or evaluation of what you're dealing with, make sure that they feel confident that they can get you to 100% of XYZ, insert limitation, right? And then at that point, if you decide that you want to get treatment and start with us and you like the plan of care and you're confident that we can help out, then we can go ahead and set up a full evaluation and some treatment sessions. And then at that point, they're usually going to be in. If you're doing it in that way, and trust me, it's going to take a while to get comfortable with this. Don't worry. Everyone goes through it, okay? And the other part of that is that you have to be confident that, if they don't make the decision to see you guys, they're going to make the decision to either not see anyone and they're going to stay limited and that's not serving them, or they're going to go elsewhere where maybe the care is subpar, or they're going to go somewhere where someone tries to get them to do surgery or something else, and they can end up, you guys have probably seen it, people coming in having been in multiple surgeries or multiple injections, got subpar care, went somewhere where the care was crap, and they finally ended up with you guys, and they're already in just a world of pain and issues that you could have solved early on. And you got to know that we are helping them to make the right decision with these. We're not trying to sell them on anything that they don't need. Okay. Never, ever feel like you're doing that. Mark will tell you, everyone will tell you, like, if you don't feel like you can help, if you don't feel like your service is the best possible thing for them in that situation, then sure as shit, don't try to get them to come in. Help them to find the right solution. That's what we're trying to do here. But we have to understand the way the human psyche works, especially when it means more out of pocket. So we're helping them to make the right decision at all times. We're not trying to sell them on anything they don't need. And I think that if you really remind yourself that a lot of the discomfort around this conversation over time, not immediately, but over time, will start to be alleviated. and you'll start to be like not dreading. I actually like when people ask that question first, because I'm like, all right, let's see what's going to happen. It's kind of like a game. And though it seems that I can see it in your face, it's a very touchy subject. It is for everyone. Don't worry about that. It will get better. If you're able to follow this kind of general guidelines, you will get more comfortable with it. And as you see more and more people deciding to come see you instead of going to get surgery or these other options that are not going to give them as good of an outcome, then you can feel really good about obtaining these skills of how to speak with, a potential client who's initially talking about insurance. But actually what they really ultimately want has nothing to do with insurance. Has nothing to do with it at all. Now and again, there are going to be people who are truly like financially pressed and really could not go out of network, right? But 9 times out of 10 from what I've seen and with all the people that I've coached and talked to and seen in my own, prospective clients and the people that almost didn't come in, but then they decided to, but they were talking a whole lot about like, I don't think I can afford that, blah, blah, blah. They got a nicer car than mine. They got a TV, twice as big. They're talking about, how they went to Vegas 2 months ago and blew $5,000 at the craps table. I mean, I'm not saying that all people who have the financial objection are that's not describing all of them. But what you'll find when you really look at the situation as a whole is that the financial objection is the quickest, easy one for them to bring up, even if it's actually, if you look at their lifestyle, not really the case. It's just that you have not proven to them verbally or with what they see online or whatever, or with who told them about your services. You've not fully proven to them that you can help them to get back to that thing that they're limited in doing. But if you get them to speak about it, bring up those emotional pain points, get them to come in and further the relationship with a free consultation with a great physical therapist who tells them exactly what's going on, why they're having this pain. And in that consultation, they're doing the same thing I'm telling you to do. They're saying, how is this limiting you? Okay, you can only run 1 mile now before it starts hurting. What do you want to be doing? You want to run marathons? You just want to do 3 miles 3 times a week. What are your goals? Okay, I think we can get you to that. I've seen this a ton of times. This is what's going on. And I think we can get you back to, 3 times a week with probably about this many treatments. How does that sound? Right? And then the decision is on them. Right? But it's only via walking them through this process step by step and not trying to jump too many stepping stones at one time, are you going to be able to take someone whose first question is about insurance and make them a very happy to pay out of pocket customer. But I see it all the time in my practice and so many of my students. When you follow this model, right, you can get people who initially are asking about that to be very happy to pay out of pocket because they're getting a higher level service and they're getting the outcome they want. They're getting past the limitation, the thing that is keeping them from living the lifestyle that they want to. You have that solution, right? But it's a process of getting them to the point of saying, yes, let's do this. But it's very similar, like I just said, it's very similar to the conversation that you're having on the phone initially. It's just that you mix in doing enough of a screen to figure out what's causing their pain, explain it to them. This is the plan. This is the plan that we would take here at this clinic in order to get you back to insert limitation. It's a pretty simple approach, but when when someone comes in and you give them a great, even though they're not a customer yet, a great feeling, a great warm welcome, and answer their questions and let them realize that this thing is not only treatable, but it's you treat it all the time, right? You're saying, things like, I bet when you bend forward, it kind of hurts in this way, or, as you gather the data, how their symptoms are going to be responding to certain movements or positions. When you start to precede the things that they're saying about what they're feeling with, I bet when you do this, it hurts like this. They're like, wow, this person really not only gets my injury, but they're talking about my goals too, right? They might not be thinking this consciously, but subconsciously, this is what's happening. If you're doing that, and the majority of it is really a conversation, you're just kind of confirming with a few tests and measures and screening what exactly is going on so that you can describe, the plan and say, I'll have more detail when we can do a really full evaluation. But from what I'm seeing right now and what you're telling me about your symptoms and what I'm seeing with your range of motion, et cetera, this is what's likely causing your pain. This is how we would treat it. We treat this kind of thing very successfully all the time. And if you feel confident that we can get you back to XYZ in this time frame and that works for you, then let's talk about setting up a full evaluation and getting some treatments booked. And actually, I would say this: I wouldn't try to book multiple treatments. Just book the full evaluation, because you don't want them leaving adding up. Wow, I just booked 4 times. I just booked $150 plus 3 times $125. You want them leaving thinking, I just booked $150, right? And the sooner you can book that next session, the better, because the longer they have to kind of think about it and talk themselves out of it, or their spouse talks themselves out of it, the higher chance that you're going to get cancellations and no-shows. That's kind of a different topic. We're now kind of moving into the discovery session, but back to that original conversation, I do want to kind of round back to the original, their original question. This is really important. I forgot to do this one time, and I'll never forget it again. I went through exactly what I just described. The person was all excited, like, all right, great. And I started with, I started with a lot of our patients, have Blue Cross Blue Shield. But before we, talk about coverage, why don't you tell me about what's going on so I can make sure we're a good fit for your needs. And then 20 minutes later, we've got them scheduled for the free consultation, all that kind of stuff. And I forgot to come back to the original question. And then he came in to the free consult, which was with my staff PT. And then they had the conversation about, coverage versus not coverage. And he was quite upset that he had taken the time, because he was like, I didn't know, based on what you said, a lot of our patients had Blue Cross, he felt like it was misleading. And so it's very important to come back to it and say, back to your original question. Now, this is after the entire conversation. They're booked, they're ready to go, and say, listen, I want you to know something. As you come in, you'd asked about Blue Cross, or in this case, Aetna. Like I said, a lot of our patients do have Aetna, but we are not in network with Aetna. We are out of network with Aetna, and we bill Aetna out of network on your behalf, or logistically, however you guys go about it, then you would describe it. And if, and you'd say, again, what we just booked you for is a completely free consultation. There's no prior authorization. There's absolutely no cost to you or your insurance at all. We just want to make sure that we're, fully confident that we can get you back to running 3 miles 3 times a week before you get started, and that you have that same confidence. But if you do decide to move forward with treatment, then we can call Aetna on your behalf and figure out what the cost to you is going to be. How does that sound?
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Cash-Based Practice Podcast. If you liked what you heard here today, we have some extremely important things we want to send you. First, a Quickstart guide to cash-based physical therapy and Medicare. This free ebook will provide the primary rules and regulations surrounding this confusing but important topic. Secondly, we want to share with you the 5 characteristics common to all successful cash-based practices. Find out the vital things Jarod has learned from years of interviewing cash practice owners and running his own successful cash practice. As one of our listeners, we want to give you all this information absolutely free. You can get it right now by going to drjarodcarter.com/success. Again, that's drjarodcarter.com/success. Go there now to get your copies, and we'll see you next time.